Pregnancy is this incredible journey, but it can also come with some unexpected twists, and one of the most common is gestational diabetes. For decades, the go-to treatment has been insulin injections. But what if there was a simpler way? A pill instead of a needle? Today, we are jumping right into that debate. When it comes to managing gestational diabetes, is the convenient pill, metformin, actually a better choice than the trusted old-timer, insulin? Let's figure it out.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get a handle on what gestational diabetes actually is and why it's such a big deal. Then, we'll meet our two main players, the long-reigning champ, insulin, and the new challenger, metformin. After that, we're going to put them head-to-head and look at the actual evidence. What's better for mom? What's better for baby? And finally, we'll see where the medical world stands today and what's on the horizon for this really critical decision. All right, so first things first, before we can even talk about treatments, we got to understand the problem itself. So what exactly is gestational diabetes? And why is getting the treatment right so incredibly important? So gestational diabetes mellitus, or GDM, is this unique kind of diabetes that, get this, only shows up during pregnancy. And it is way more common than you might think. It hits about 1 in every 7 pregnancies across the globe. That's a huge number. And it's precisely why the World Health Organization calls GDM a global health research priority. And the reason it's such a big deal is because the stakes are really, really high for both mom and baby. For the mother, GDM can cause things like high blood pressure, increase the odds of a C-section, and even raise her risk of getting type 2 diabetes later in life. And for the baby, well, the risks include being born dangerously large, having super low blood sugar right after birth, and even struggling to breathe. So managing this isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely crucial. So how do doctors actually handle this? Well, when diet and exercise just aren't cutting it, they turn to medication. And for a very, very long time, there was pretty much only one name in the game. And that name is insulin. For decades, it's been the gold standard. I mean, it works. It has a long safety record, and this is key, it doesn't cross the placenta to get to the baby. But it's got one major drawback from a patient's perspective. It has to be injected. We're talking multiple times a day, every day. And that's a tough pill to swallow, or, well, a tough shot to take for a lot of expecting mothers. That challenge of daily injections really opened the door for something new. And over the last 20 years or so, a brand new contender has stepped into the ring, metformin. And this slide, wow, this really gets to the heart of why metformin is so appealing. It's a simple pill versus a daily injection, and that makes a world of difference. In one landmark study, more than 76% of women who took metformin said, yep, I'd do it again. For insulin, that number was just over 27%. That is not a small difference. That's a landslide in patient preference. But here it is. The big catch. The one question that this entire debate hinges on. Unlike insulin, metformin does cross the placenta. It gets into the baby's system. And that raises a massive concern. Could a drug that's helping the mother have unknown, long-term effects on her child's development down the road? And that question right there brings us to the core of this whole thing. For the last 20 years, scientists have been scrambling to find the answer. So when you put these two treatments side by side, what does the evidence actually say? Let's dive in. Okay, let's start with mom. What are the outcomes for her? Well, right away we see some clear wins for metformin. Study after study shows that women on metformin gain way less weight during pregnancy. They also seem to have a lower risk of developing that pregnancy-related high blood pressure. Now, the data on C-sections is a little bit murky, but here's the kicker. For the main goal, controlling blood sugar, they both perform about the same. Okay, so what about the baby? This is where the case for metformin gets even more compelling. We consistently see that babies whose moms were on metformin have a much lower risk of that dangerous dip in blood sugar right after birth. They're also less likely to be born extra large and less likely to need a trip to the NICU. And while early data on preterm birth was a little scary, bigger, more recent studies have pretty much shown there's no real difference between the two. But hold on, there's a really important wrinkle in this story. Metformin isn't always a magic bullet. In a lot of the major studies, a pretty big chunk of women who start on metformin, we're talking up to nearly half of them, still need to add insulin later on to get their blood sugar under control. So for many women, it's not really an either-or situation, but more like start with the pill and add the shot if you need it. So after looking at all this evidence, where does that leave us? What's the verdict from the medical community today? And what are the big questions they're still trying to answer?
Now, you'd think with all that positive data, metformin would be the clear winner, right? Well, not so fast. It turns out there's a major split in opinion around the world. In the UK, their top health authority basically says, yep, metformin is a great first choice. But in the US, and with some big international groups, they're still saying, nope, insulin is still our first pick, metformin is plan B. And it all circles back to that one nagging question about the long-term effects.
And that leads us to this really fascinating kind of mind-bending concept called metabolic memory. The theory goes that the environment inside the womb, especially how much sugar is floating around, can actually program a child's metabolism for the rest of their life. It's like it leaves a permanent fingerprint. And so the big lingering fear is that while metformin has all these great short-term benefits, its presence in the baby's system could somehow maybe alter that programming in ways we just can't see yet. And that's really the ultimate question, isn't it? Could a treatment that helps so much during those 9 months actually cast a shadow over a child's health for decades to come? For now, the short-term data for metformin looks fantastic. It's really promising. But the answer to that bigger, long-term question, well, that story is still being written. It's a powerful reminder that in medicine, things are always evolving. Thanks for diving into this with us.